Some of you may be familiar with the allegory of the cave. It's Plato. Is this we going here? Okay, I'll just get closer. Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, told this tale to illustrate denial and education and things of that nature. And it's about a group of people who are in the bottom of a cave, and they're chained to the cave wall, and they're looking at the cave wall, and their only idea about reality is the shadows that are cast upon the wall that they're facing. So finally, somebody comes down there, a philosopher hero, and convinces them or harangues them, or in one way or another, sets them free and pulls them up to the mouth of the cave, where they can actually experience true light and see what the world is really like. So initially, there's some resistance, in fact, to leaving the shadow world and going up with the instructor to the world of light. And in fact, some people have to be sort of forcibly taken up there. But, you know, they get up there and it's happily ever after. Cue credits, and it sounds good. But what if the shadows are really pretty? What if they are easily understood? What if they make for a kind of good company, foster pleasant dreams, and just make you feel comfortable, even if you're chained to them, so that the chain does not feel incarcerative, but feels more like a lifeline? And then what if the lighted world above that was eventually revealed outside was ugly, or too complex, too violent, or uncomfortable, or just no longer on a scale that you could comprehend? What if knowledge did not feel like power, but felt more like a nightmare? What if it was less Plato and more like the Matrix movie, where Morpheus offers the blue pill to stay comfy, or the red pill to wake up to a horrifying truth? In that case, what would you choose? A false but lovely reality that you know, or a true but painful reality that you must learn? That's our choice this morning. And either choice has a cost. The cost of enlightenment is pain. But the cost of comfort is enlightenment. And as we may see, possibly our very lives. Still, the choice is yours. So today we'll leave the cave a little. One of our caves anyway. It's a cave that as a culture we have left before and returned to, maybe more than once, always to our approaching peril. Every time we return to the cave, the cost of staying comfortable rises, as does the cost of enlightenment. So here's what this particular bit of enlightenment sounds like. We have less than 20 years before life on this planet, human life in particular, is decimated. That's hard to believe. It's hard to say because it's hard to believe. That's why I wanted to start by reminding you and myself of Plato's cave. For a while, it is hard to believe, it is also true that according to multiple models, it will take us less than 20 years at our current growth rate of carbon emissions to raise the temperature of our atmosphere by 2 degrees Celsius. So 2 degrees is a number that was arrived at politically for 167 countries that signed on to the Copenhagen Accord. And these countries represent 87% of carbon emissions. And this is these countries saying that, not some wee minister at the edge of empire or some greenhouse junkie journalist in Rolling Stone. This is an international treaty saying 2 degrees is what we have. And of course, most reputable climatologists feel that 2 degrees is too high a panic number. It's an important number at any rate, because a 2-degree change would likely entail the onset of the collapse of agriculture, the ruination of coastal cities, the drowning of some island nations, megastorms, and dying oceans. And actually the amount of time is closer to 16 years. My girls will just be graduating from high school. Though in the wake of such ecological catastrophe, it is difficult to imagine a society that will be functional enough to support high schools. I'll say it again, in case you are preferring to make funny shadows on the wall of your cave. At the current rate of carbon emissions, which is increasing, we have 16 years until the tipping point. 16 years until life on Earth begins a radical and violent reconfiguration. So I confess, I knew there was a problem. I had begun to understand its potential cost, but the gravity of it eluded me. And it wasn't until I was invited to take part in a national preach-in on global warming, which is taking place in churches all over the country today. It wasn't until I was invited to take part in that preach-in that I did the research wherein I came across this startling and frightening reality. I would have returned to my shadow in the cave, uncomprehending the stakes. And that has now changed for me. So Bill McKibben is who I turn to for most of this information. And he's one of the foremost experts on, and certainly the most prominent and consistent public voice concerning global warming. And he identifies global warming as the greatest challenge humans have ever faced. Given the stakes, I understand what he's saying, but I actually disagree with him a little bit. See, I don't think that the challenge is all that different than the challenges that we've been facing forever. For global warming is not the product of some malevolent visitor, not a virus or an alien attack. It is a product of our best efforts and our worst sins manifest in our systems of power. The difference now is at the scale of violence that our systems have grown able to commit. And so while the immediate need is to change the system, the perpetual need is to change the heart. Greed is the villain. Denial is the willing accomplice. Financial and political systems are the bagmen. So I'll give you some examples. Despite 30 years of consistent warning from the scientific community about the ultimate cost of carbon emissions, Exxon plans to spend $100 million a day searching for more hydrocarbon-producing resources. That's $100 million a day being spent to destroy the civilization that allows Exxon to exist. Meanwhile, the infamous Koch brothers, who reportedly made most of their money in hydrocarbons, spent around $200 million this past election.
Billion, no, million.
Million, 200 million. This past election, backing political puppets and doing their part to turn America into a banana republic. And that is greed, not economic principle. The good news is greed is short-sighted. Greed eventually eats itself. But on such a scale, it will take us down with it this time. The World Bank has sounded the alarm, reporting that we are on track to heat up the atmosphere by 4 degrees by the end of this century. That's 4 degrees. 2 degrees, story is pretty much over. So 4 degrees by the end of the century, unless the global community acts on climate change. Yet according to the World Resource Institute, the World Bank Group currently finances the construction of 29 coal-burning power plants around the globe to the tune of $5 billion. Meanwhile, you and I both know there's a problem, but most of us don't do much about it. Not enough to make it meaningful. Strangely, not enough to save our lives. And it's for similar reasons to the Koch brothers. We have confused ourselves with the status quo and are not anxious to sacrifice our time or pensions to save ourselves from a threat we can only imagine. It's as though we believe that none of this is in our immediate self-interest. So McKibben observes that fighting global warming is like trying to build an abolition movement among slaveholders, which illustrates the unfortunate fact that we are dependent on the very product that is killing us. So in the end, the choice is between the survival of energy profiteers and their beneficiaries for a little bit longer. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, the survival of our planet. Neither choice comes pain-free for you or for me. Either would require very real changes in our way of life. So knowing this, hopefully, and of course, you choose life. You choose to fight for your children and grandchildren. But what can you do? You install those curly light bulbs. You recycle. Of course, you probably have a flat screen TV. But the problem has gotten worse. So maybe you think these lifestyle changes don't matter much. Well, they do matter, but they won't win the fight. So you understand that the problem is huge in scope with players of the highest ante. And so we need a national solution. Let's change it politically. So you vote for the candidate that gives the issue the most lip service. Except this past presidential cycle, no one did. In fact, Obama vowed that we will keep drilling everywhere we can. And then there are the Koch brothers and their kind. So that's grim, but there are solutions. Bill McKibben, who has been my guru for this sermon, recommends a fee and dividend strategy where carbon producers would pay a tax for their pollution, much like we have to pay to get our trash taken away. And then citizens would get a dividend check from that payment to set off the increased cost of fuel. Whatever the solution, it will not be seen by anyone strong enough to make a difference until we make them see it. A system abetted by denial and fueled by greed has its eyes opened only to its bank account. And to make any difference, that's where we must strike. So, as we've already heard, on the 17th of this month, there will be a massive demonstration in Washington, D.C. to protest the Keystone Pipeline. And such an action is incredibly valuable. It raises awareness in the society and in the halls of power and demonstrates what people power looks like. And indeed, Bill is going to sacrifice his time and money to participate in the march. Yet as critical as such an event is, it's not going to change the system. For us, this is a moral issue, a religious issue, and an issue of life and death. But for the system that we must change, it's a financial issue. So if you agree that the fight is on, then you must prepare to fight. There are things we can do. For instance, you can stop or severely reduce your consumption of cow. The current production levels of meat contribute between 14 and 22% of the 36 billion tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases in the world every year. The cattle industry is a chief culprit. You do not need to eat a cow to get to work or to heat your house. And so there is more of a possibility for a lifestyle change on our part to result in financial consequences for our enemies. The question here is, do you want a burger or a future? Sunshine or cave shadows? Also, we have an endowment at this church. I know that the endowment committee is evaluating our investments currently, discussing how they engage with our values. And today I am urging the members of that committee to divest from any company whose principal product or waste product is carbon emissions. Each of you may investigate your pensions and investments and do the same. If you are unwilling to divest from Shell, Exxon, and the like, you are contributing to your children's death and the death of the earth. Now, if you are tied to a larger organization and unable to call the shots for your own investment, then you are actually doubly blessed. For you have the opportunity to cause change in a big system. Fight for your company to divest. If you work for the university or the city or another major employer, it is time to make a stink. We can fight. You can fight. We can hit the system on its bottom line. We can weaken them in this way and gain leverage. It's happened before. This is how, or at least one of the major ways in which apartheid was ended in South Africa. We can gain leverage in this way to fight to save our DNA and to give our children a chance to screw up as badly as we have. Greed, denial, power systems, these we can fight. And there is time left to do so, but the time is now. Not some other time. There's no returning to the cave. Time is now, not another day, but this day. We have a responsibility to join this fight, if not for our legacy, if not for our love of animals and plants and water and food, then for the sake of our souls. Last week, we talked with James Luther Adams about what it means to be a religious liberal. This week, he wants to speak to us again, reminding us that a fundamental tenet of the free person's faith is that it finds its richest focus in meaningful human history, in free cooperative effort for the common good. That means that the free person's faith makes headlines nationally, locally, and personally. And I don't know what is more common or more good than our beautiful blue planet. And so there is no greater need for a headline than in the battle to save it and to save humans from humanity. It's time to get to work. Amen.